Today, my low carb friends, I am super excited because I have just hit my first 500 subscribers. I'm so excited. Thank you all so much for you who have subscribed, and thank you in advance for those who will subscribe. Thank you so much. You guys are wonderful, awesome. I really appreciate it. I love doing these videos. I love cooking. I love sharing my knowledge of cooking, and I'm so thankful that you guys enjoy watching it. You guys are wonderful. So for today's video, I'm going to do a recipe that's a little bit different for me because it uses coconut flour. Now, if you've seen my videos in the past, or if you've looked on my website and seen any of my recipes, you'll notice that I don't use a whole lot of coconut flour. And when I do use it, it's just in very small amounts. And that's because coconut flour can be a little tricky to work with, especially if you're new to baking with low-carb flours. It can be tricky. If you don't get your ratios just right, your baked good is not going to turn out. I know this from experience. Trust me, it will not turn out if you don't get your ratios just so when it comes to coconut flour. That being said, within the next couple weeks, I am going to be coming out with a video that is going to show you how to use coconut flour as a substitute for grain flours and nut flours. So keep an eye out for that. That's going to be coming up hopefully within the next couple weeks. But for today, I'm going to show you how to make a basic cookie recipe using coconut flour. And I'm going to show you how to make it two different ways. The first way is going to be strictly using coconut flour only, and the second way is going to be using a coconut almond flour blend, which is my personal favorite way to use it because it gives the taste and texture that is the closest to the grain flours that most people are used to tasting. And one of the things I really like about this recipe is that once you learn how to make the base of this, you can add anything you want. You can add in chocolate chips, you can add in nuts, you can add in dried fruit, whatever you want. You could make your own creative taste in your own cookie, whatever you want. So if you want printable versions of these, you can check out my website at janetsdeliciouslowcarbkitchen.com. You can find printable versions of these and other goodies there for you. And if you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Also, when you click that subscribe button, right next to the subscribe button, there's a little bell. Click that bell. That way you can be notified every time I put out a new video. And while you do that, let's get cooking. When using only coconut flour, preheat your oven to 350 degrees. Line a large baking sheet with parchment paper and set that aside. In a medium mixing bowl, combine a half cup of coconut flour, 1 cup of monk fruit sweetener or granulated sweetener of your choice, 2 teaspoons of baking powder. Whisk these all together until they're fully combined and there's no lumps left in the flour. In a separate large mixer bowl, combine 2 large room temperature eggs. Make sure they are room temperature, that way your cookie dough will be nice and smooth. 3/4 cup of melted butter and 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. Beat these together on low speed for about 30 seconds. Then increase to medium and beat on medium speed for another 30 seconds. Or until the wet ingredients are fully combined and slightly foamy. You're just going to see a little bit of bubbles starting to form at the edge of your ingredients. That's what you want, just a little bit of light foam there. Add your dry ingredients to your wet ingredients. Make sure you add it carefully. You don't want your dry ingredients showering all over the place. Then beat on low for about 10 seconds or just to get the dry ingredients a little damp so they don't fly everywhere. Then increase the speed to medium and beat on medium for another 30 seconds or until everything is fully combined and smooth. Once the ingredients is all fully combined and you've got a nice smooth cookie dough formed, then let the cookie dough sit at room temperature uncovered for about 15 minutes. This is so the coconut flour can absorb all the moisture and start to expand in volume. That way you'll have enough volume to make your cookies. Coconut flour is very absorbent, so you do have to add a lot of liquid And then you do definitely have to let it set so the coconut flour can absorb that liquid. After the coconut flour has set, check your dough, and if it still seems wet and sticky, then add a little more coconut flour just a little bit at a time and stir it in to fully combine it. And then after each addition, make sure you let the dough sit for just a couple minutes to absorb that addition. And then if it still feels wet and sticky, keep adding little bits of coconut flour at a time until the dough is the consistency of traditional cookie dough. I actually ended up having to add 1/4 cup more coconut flour than just the 1/2 cup of coconut flour. But every brand of coconut flour is different and has different textures. My coconut flour is very light, it's very fine, so I needed a little bit more. But if your coconut flour is a little more dense, then it will absorb more moisture, so you won't have to use as much coconut flour. That's why I say to start out with a 1/2 cup, then after it sets, if it still seems wet and sticky, then you gradually add more until it's that consistency of traditional cookie dough. So you might not need as much as I did. I had to use a total of 3/4 cup of coconut flour altogether. But again, you judge it according to your coconut flour and the brand that you have. Once your dough is all mixed together and it's the consistency of the traditional cookie dough, then scoop it out by tablespoonfuls onto a lined baking sheet. Now, if you're not sure if you have the right texture of cookie dough, then just scoop one cookie, bake it, and see how it turns out. If it spreads a lot, then that means you still need to add a little bit more coconut flour. If it's real stiff, then that means you need to add a little bit of milk of your choice, just a teaspoon or full at a time, just until you get the right consistency. So if you're not sure about that texture, don't scoop all the cookie dough out and then cook it and then find out you don't have the right texture. Bake one cookie at a time until you're sure of the texture of your cookie dough. So once the cookie dough is all scooped out onto your lined baking sheet, then take each scoop in your hand and roll it lightly to form a tight ball. Then use your fingers and lightly flatten the tops of the cookies to form a cookie shape. These cookies don't spread very much. They do spread just a little bit, but anytime you're working with gluten-free flours, they really don't spread all that much. So it will spread a little bit, but pretty much whatever shape you put it into on your baking sheet, that's pretty much the shape that it's going to turn out to be. So if you just keep it in that tight ball, it's going to come out into a ball shape, which doesn't taste bad. It just doesn't look like a cookie. It looks like a cookie ball. So if you don't mind that shape, you can just leave it as a ball. But if you're wanting the traditional cookie shape, just flatten it just slightly. You don't want to flatten it completely. Just flatten it just a little bit on the top so it looks like a cookie shape. Once all the cookies have been formed, then put it in your oven, bake it at 375 degrees for 8 to 10 minutes or until it's lightly golden around the edges. Now these can burn really fast, so really keep an eye on them. Mine took exactly 8 minutes, but everyone's oven is different, so really keep an eye on it. Check it at that 8-minute mark, and most likely it will be done. Once it's done baking, remove it from the oven. The cookies will be very soft. I've said this before. I will say it again and again and again. Gluten-free baked goods are soft when they come out. You do not want to overcook them. They overcook very easily. So you want to take them out when they're just a little bit underdone and they're still soft. Do not cook them until they're hard. You will burn your cookies. Then you're going to let them sit on the baking sheet for another 8 to 10 minutes or until they've firmed up enough that you can handle them without them falling apart. Once they've firmed up, transfer them to a wire rack and let them cool completely. Once they've cooled completely, you can store them in an airtight container at room temperature until you're ready to eat them. For the coconut flour blend, again, you're going to preheat your oven to 350 degrees and line 1 to 2 large baking sheets with parchment paper. In a medium mixing bowl, Combine 3/4 cup plus 3 tablespoons of almond flour. Add a 1/4 cup of coconut flour, 1 cup of monk fruit sweetener or granulated sweetener of your choice, 2 teaspoons of baking powder. Whisk these all together until they're fully combined and all the lumps are out of the flour. Set that aside, and in a large mixer bowl, combine 2 large room temperature eggs. Again, make sure they are room temperature so your dough comes out nice and creamy and soft. A 1/2 cup of melted butter and 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. Beat these on low for about 30 seconds, then increase the speed to medium and beat on medium for another 30 seconds or until everything is fully combined and slightly foamy. Carefully add the dry ingredients to the wet ingredients. Then beat on low for about 10 seconds or just until the dry ingredients are a little bit wet, and increase the speed to medium and beat on medium for 30 more seconds or until everything is combined and you have a nice smooth cookie dough. Once it's all combined, if the batter still feels wet and sticky, then add small amounts of coconut flour a little at a time until it's the consistency of traditional cookie dough. I ended up having, again, to use another 1/4 cup of coconut flour. But as I've already stated in the other recipe, everybody's coconut flour is different. But just keep adding it a little bit at a time until it gets that consistency. It should feel and act the same way as traditional cookie dough would. So once all of your ingredients are fully incorporated and the dough is nice and creamy and soft, then scoop the cookie dough by tablespoonfuls onto your prepared baking sheet. Now, if you're wanting to add anything into your cookie dough, like say you want to add chocolate chips or nuts or fruit or dried fruit or just anything that you want to add to it, you can add any type or any amount of add-in that you choose into the cookie dough after you've mixed it all together and before you bake it. Just gently fold in about a 1/2 cup of whatever add-ins you might want, whether it be, like I said, the chocolate chips or nuts or fruit, whatever you want. Once you've got the dough all scooped out, then use your hands and lightly roll the scoops into tight balls. Place them about 1.5 to 2 inches apart. These cookies don't spread a lot, but they do spread a little bit. So about 1.5 to 2 inches apart when you put them on the baking sheet. Then use your hands and lightly flatten the tops of the balls to form a cookie shape. Again, like I said, these will spread just a little bit, but they don't spread very much. They're pretty much going to be whatever shape that you put them on your cookie sheet. So if you leave them in that tight ball, they're going to come out mostly in a ball shape. If you flatten them on the tops, then they're going to come out with that traditional flat cookie top look. Once the cookies are all shaped, put them in the oven, bake for 8 to 10 minutes, or just until they're lightly golden around the edges. Mine only took 8 minutes. It was perfect. So check them at that 8 minutes. If they're golden, take them out. If they're not golden, put them back in just for a couple minutes. They do get golden real fast. Once they're baked, take them out of the oven and they will be soft. These are gluten-free, so they will be soft. Let them sit on the cookie sheet for 8 to 10 minutes or until they're firm enough to pick up without them falling apart. Once they've sat for a bit and they're firmed up, transfer them to a wire rack and let them cool completely. Once they're cooled completely, store them in an airtight container until you're ready to eat them. And that's our recipe of the day. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did and you want to see more videos like this, then click the thumbs up like button, click that subscribe button, leave me a comment if you want to. Let me know if there's any recipes that you'd like to learn how to make, and I'll do what I can to get those out there for you. And as always, keep cooking.